Wow, those lights are bright. All right. Good morning, everybody. It is fantastic to be here with you this morning. In the spirit of being on the USS Hornet today, we thought we would do the Top Gun version of a token sale. And we're going to have Maverick, Goose, and a number of the others walk us through some of the ins and outs of staying out of trouble while you're doing your token sale. Just to give a little bit of background, I run a company in this space called NetKey. We do AML and KYC compliance for blockchain companies and token sales. And we've worked with a number of the token sales operating in this space, both historically and going forward, including some of the top 10 largest that have occurred so far. We've actually heard a lot of things from different people that are running ICOs or token sales where they have reasons where they think that they sit outside of some of the existing rules and structures. And in some cases, once they've gotten some additional legal advice, it's ended up bringing them back, kind of back in, reeling things in a little bit. And so what we wanted to go through today was, what are some of the things that we've heard from people out there about why compliance doesn't matter to them or why they sit outside of regulation, and just some of the maybe counterfacts that you may want to think about with that. So, first of all, some people say we're operating on a blockchain. Compliance doesn't matter on blockchains. This was something that we heard a lot a few years ago, up until maybe about 9 months ago. We hear a little bit less today. The fact of the matter is whether you operate on a blockchain or not operate on a blockchain isn't what actually matters. It's the application, the service, the things that you're providing. And so if you're providing something that looks like a financial service or looks like a security or looks like those other things, it probably is. And because we sit in an ecosystem and an environment that currently has the attention of just about every regulator in the US and overseas, you actually have to do a better job than people that are operating in spaces that have a little less scrutiny at this time. So there's a lot of people out there today that are saying, hey, what I'm offering is really a utility, and my token is a utility. And as a result of that, my offering is a utility. I would urge you to step back and take a little bit of a think about that. One of the things that the chairman of the SEC said was every ICO that he's seen kind of looks like a security. And many people took that to mean that there was no such thing as a utility token. But he didn't actually say that. The tokens themselves may be a utility that's used to provide a service. But the manner in which they were structured and offered still may make that offering a security or the ICO a security. And so don't assume just because the token that you're providing provides an underlying utility that gives you protection from some of the securities requirements. One of the things I just wanted to say in the middle here quickly is that I'm up here kind of representing what other people are saying. We at NetKey got into this space to enable entrepreneurs, enable people that are building projects, and to help ensure that they had the tools that they need to be able to move forward and complete and build out their projects and move forward without looking over their shoulder. I'm not necessarily here to say that I would want to write these specific rules or those things, just what the reality is today. So what if I just ran my token sale overseas instead of running it here in the US? Does that protect me from kind of US law, US regulation? And what we've seen in a number of cases is that isn't the case. Probably the best example of this would be the exchange BTCE. This is a case where the operator lived in Russia. The exchange did have some US customers. And the US used that as a way to extend their jurisdiction overseas and arrest the operator of the network while he was on vacation in Greece. Some other examples of that I've heard of today recently was talking to some of the lawyers that are operating in the space. As is not a surprise to many of you here, the SEC has been reaching out to companies that have done token sales. And he actually gave me 2 examples while we were out over drinks, where the SEC had actually come to talk to him and to issue subpoenas. One of them, the client actually was in China, a guy who lives in China and all that sort of thing. And as a result, the SEC actually didn't even have anywhere to file a subpoena. They couldn't find the guy to give one to him. And so in that case, being overseas actually provided a pretty effective protection for him. In another case, there was a US entrepreneur who had registered the company overseas. And in that case, the SEC didn't even come to the lawyer to issue the subpoena. They just went to their house. And so the fact that the company was registered overseas didn't actually change the fact that the SEC still saw jurisdiction. And the same has been true of US Treasury and others. So another thing we've been hearing really recently is about airdrops and what's happening with those, and that they may be a way to get around regulation because you're not selling anything directly, and so you may not be selling a security. And people think it may also get them around anti-money laundering and know your customer requirements. I would recommend that in most instances that actually isn't true. There's actually been legal guidance that's come out from Coin Center in terms of an opinion that an airdrop may mean that you are delivering an unregistered security to people, which carries the same penalties as selling an unregistered security. And similarly, if that token actually has any underlying value, you're still limited with anti-money laundering and counterterrorism financing requirements. And so in that case, you likely would have the expense and hassle of doing KYC on your airdrop recipients, even though you're not receiving revenue from them. So this would be a case if you're looking at an airdrop as a way to kind of get around regulatory requirements. I would highly advise talking to a qualified lawyer in the space to continue to get an opinion there. So what is it that we should do? Because certainly we shouldn't just shut the ecosystem down. Well, I mean, the first thing that you should do is, as was talked about a little earlier on the stage, get a good set of advisors and get them early in the process. If you're going to be doing something in the blockchain or in the token sales space, you have all of the complexity of doing a regular startup with the added complexity of the legal and risk requirements of the fact that you're dealing with monetary instruments. So please make sure that you get good legal counsel, get good advisors, and talk to them very early on, and assume that every step of this process is going to have to be planned out in detail. Building your product is going to be just one part of this process. I've been involved in the past in taking 4 companies public before coming into the blockchain ecosystem, and we sort of assumed in the IPO and going public space, and this information is even a little bit dated, you should assume it costs you $1 million or $1.5 million to go public, and then about $1 million a year that you're going to spend on reporting and compliance to keep up with the public stuff. I think over time you're going to see similar things in the token environment, and you should plan on and expect that. So why would anybody want to do this? This sounds like, I'll tell you, when I first got into the Bitcoin and blockchain space, I assumed that what we were building was an open and permissionless network. We definitely saw compliance as a part of what we were going to do. But we certainly, I'll be honest, I didn't anticipate that I would be spending probably 50% of the time I spend in industry talking to lawyers. And you should kind of assume that that's going to be the case if you want to be working deeply in this area, and start to work on that early. And so, if you want to be in an environment where you don't have to deal with a lot of regulation, or you don't want to have to deal with lawyers, or you don't want to have to deal with compliance, I would advise you to probably stay away from blockchain and probably stay away from token sales. But if you do want to be in an environment where you have an opportunity to do something truly transformational, and you do have the opportunity to build the next generation in internet infrastructure and architecture, and you do want to be a part of the future that decentralizes power and moves it from institutions to individuals, then I would encourage you to jump in and just understand that the pain is part of the process. So where does that leave us right now? Frankly, what we see is that a lot of token sales at the moment are slowing down a little bit. We definitely don't see the ecosystem stopping in any way. We do see a lot of the noise going away. I was talking to somebody earlier. I'd said we sort of we've seen three channels of ICOs. One are the ones that have been kind of very locked down and professional from the beginning, and there's been very little slowdown there. The other has been ones with very professional entrepreneurs, but who maybe didn't have the planning up front. And so those have ended up slowing down because the entrepreneurs, when they've realized where they are, they take a step back to reassess the situation. And then there was a third group that was operating for a while that were people that weren't interested in doing this in a really serious way, but were just kind of looking at this as a way to raise money much more easily than they could in other environments. Those people have kind of fallen out of the process. So what that means, if you do want to move forward, is that actually sitting down, as I had talked about a little bit earlier, and doing the planning in your process around what's your compliance strategy going to be, what's your risk strategy going to be, what tools are we going to use to support this, for example, tools like we have to help automate the AML and KYC process, and what people are we going to need to support that process. Those are all things that are going to take you time up front, but in the end are going to allow you to move forward much more quickly than if you don't take the time to sit down and do that planning in advance. One of the things, if you're driving, if you're racing cars, that's sort of a mantra, is kind of anytime you hear a tire squeak, it means you're slowing down, right? Because the car's skidding. And so what they say is slow is smooth, and smooth is fast. Because when you're slow, it means you planned everything out and you're not reacting to things. And anytime you're having to react to something instead of having planned in advance, it bleeds the speed from your project and what you're trying to do, because the momentum that you tried to have going forward suddenly gets pushed to the side. The same is true with what you're doing here with your token sale process. Take the time, plan in advance, understand your security structure if you're going that route, understand your compliance policies, put the tools in place, and then it'll be no problem. You can light off the top deck here, you can feel the need to speed, and you won't crash and burn.